this demo we will understand first what is MicroStrategy. We will definitely understand what is the how MicroStrategy really works, and we will try to run few of the documents, and we will see what kind of things we can actually do in the MicroStrategy BI suite, so that why it's so much in demand and why it's really booming up as compared in the BI industry. Okay, so MicroStrategy. A MicroStrategy is a BI reporting tool. When I say a BI reporting tool, it's a business intelligence tool. Whenever you work in a data warehousing project, okay, you have something called as backend and the front end. When I say a backend, it's that where your actual entire data resides. So if you're working on any of the company, so all the entire company maintains its data within the database, right? So whatever the transactions are happening, whatever the products are being sold, if you can just consider, you can just look out from any angles. Everywhere there is a data, right? So you have to make sure that the data resides in your warehouse. Once that's all about the backend processing, how the data comes in, how the processing happens, how the data gets stored in the warehouse. So this is all we have a separate team which really handles all this processing. But as a BI reporter, as a developer or the architect from the as a business intelligence, a MicroStrategy is a front-end tool which helps you to fetch the required data from the warehouse, okay, and finally it's going to display in the format of a dashboard or a report. Okay, so let me just first understand the architect. Let me just make you familiarized with the MicroStrategy dashboards. I'm just going to run one sample dashboards. We are really not going to discuss much more in from the technical perspective, but I'm just going to run one dashboard, one simple dashboard for you, so that you understand like what kind of dashboards we really do have in MicroStrategy, what kind of information. That depends what kind of database, what kind of data you really have it. But yes, definitely I'm just running one of the dashboards that are pre-built in MicroStrategy environment, and it will really help you to understand, okay, what kind of information you can actually see it out in the output. So if you look over here, this is one of the dashboard which is displaying the data from the top 10 world airports. So I'm getting the information about the all the airports, having all the dynamic linkings, all my dashboard getting refreshed and everything. We'll come to this at later point of time during our demo, but this is something that what I'm talking about. Like when I say it's a front end tool, what do you mean by front end tool? At the backend, at the database level, I have all my data getting where all my data resides. So as soon as I clicked on one of the dashboard, okay, it executed the reports, it fetched the data from the warehouse, and if you look over here in my entire dashboard, I'm seeing some kind of a data. So that's what my BI reporting tool does. That's what my MicroStrategy tool does. It fetches the data and displays the data and in the specific format that I have set it up in my dashboard level. So you can have a tabular structure, or look at the different data, different look and feel, and so on. We will come to this dashboard section to understand more about it in some point of time, but this is just to make you understand what is BI reporting on. What is MicroStrategy reporting tool actually does it. It fetches the data from the warehouse and finally display in the format of reports and the dashboards as per the format that I have set up. When I say as per the format, which graph I want to display, which particular flash component I want to display, whether it has to be grid format, graph format, kind of an image format, anything, what kind of linking, what kind of tabular structures you want. Every formatting I'm going to set it up as per my need, and finally when I execute, it's going to be displayed to the users. Okay, we'll come back to understand what is MicroStrategy. As we said, MicroStrategy is a reporting tool. Before we go ahead and see about the architecture, I will just even walk you through about the training. Like what are the topics that we are really going to cover throughout the entire training. So from the MicroStrategy, we go at a broader level. Okay, we're gonna cover up MicroStrategy Desktop or a developer. MicroStrategy Desktop or a developer, that you can say is the tool, or is a MicroStrategy tool where entire your architect and designing happens. So whenever you're working on a project, you have all your models been created. That's a logical model, physical models that you generally work with the database guys, nothing from the MicroStrategy perspective. But yeah, once you are sure that I can start with my reporting environment, you always going to design your model within the MicroStrategy via MicroStrategy Desktop or a developer. If I show you the interface, it's going to look something like this. So where I have to first log in into the server and I can start developing my required objects. So MicroStrategy Developer or Desktop is a tool interface where you're going to actually log in and you're going to design and architect your entire environment. So if you look over here, I have just logged into one of the server, and if I go to one of the project, I can define all my required objects over here, as per the requirement. What are the types of objects, what are MicroStrategy objects, that we are going to see in next few minutes. But this is just one of the interface. We are going to cover it up and all the functionalities whatever are available under the desktop or a developer. So we're going to start under the training. We're going to definitely going to see how to configure the entire server, how to configure the projects, how to configure the project source. Even that we will cover up under the MicroStrategy Intelligence Server and Administration. Okay, so we're going to see what are the things that you can do in MicroStrategy Desktop. We also going to see is the MicroStrategy Intelligence Server and Administration. So when I say the Intelligence Server and Administration, we're going to configure the MicroStrategy project from scratch, because we really need to know how the MicroStrategy really works, how it interacts with all the components, how does MicroStrategy connects to the database to fetch the required data, how to configure all the project source projects. Before we actually go into creating the objects, I also need to know how to configure all the components from the installation perspective. So we even going to see the entire server administration. When I say the administration, that is from the configuration perspective and how to connect it to the database and everything. Thereafter, we also going to concentrate on MicroStrategy Architect. As I understand, you guys are very new to the data warehousing, so definitely we're gonna even we're gonna cover a few data warehousing concepts which would be helpful for you when you start working on MicroStrategy. So we have certain concepts about logical data model, physical data model. These are all data warehousing concepts, and we're gonna cover it up each and everything. So you really do not have to know. Even if you're not so sure about the data warehousing concepts, you really don't worry about that. Definitely, we're going to cover up in our training, that is with the logical model and the physical model, and thereafter we're going to start creating all the required objects. Okay, so now I'm just going to pause over here from the training perspective. I'll come back what are the types of objects and everything. But before that, let's discuss how the MicroStrategy Architect looks like. Okay, so I'm just sharing a presentation over here. I'm just sharing a snapshot over here, which tells me about more about the MicroStrategy BI architecture, how MicroStrategy really works. Okay, before we actually go and discuss about the MicroStrategy, I'm just going to discuss few things from the backend processing. So the three components that you look over here, something called a source system, ETL, and warehouse. This is not related to the MicroStrategy, but this is common to any of your data warehousing project that you work. Okay, what is a source system? In any data warehousing project you work, you need an actual data feed, right? You need some kind of files from the user for which you want to the data files from the user which you want to actually process it and store in your warehouse. The source systems are something which forms your actual source of your data. It could be in any format, whatever the users are recording their data. It could be in any format. You can see it as a flat files or unprocessed data, because no kind of aggregation, no kind of constraints, nothing. It's just a raw feed that has been sent it out. And once your backend team receives the source, the file under the source system, you have to make sure that those data gets processed and it gets finally loaded into your data warehouse. So to make sure that it fetches the record from the source system, fetches the data from the source system, performs all the transformations, aggregation, and load into your warehouse, there is something called as a backend tool, ETL, that is extraction, transform, and load. Extraction, as the name itself suggests, ETL, first step is to extract the required data from the source system. So whatever the files you receive under the source system, right? My ETL tool is going to be, first thing it's going to do is it's going to only fetch the required records, required data which I actually want to dump into my warehouse. So first thing, it's going to extract the required data. Second, it's going to perform all the required transformation. So whatever the constraints you want to apply, whatever the mapping you want to define, all the things would be done over here, would be defined over here. And finally, it's going to load into my warehouse. So that's the name it's been suggesting, ETL, extract the required data, perform all the required transformation, and finally load into my warehouse. There are various ETL tools in the market like DataStage, Informatica. Which ETL tool every company uses the one of the ETL tool. So that depends, irrespective of whatever the ETL tools has been used. You can come across either it's a DataStage, Informatica, on your project to project or company to company. Once this step has been done in my data warehouse, you will see all the required data much more structured, stored in the forms of tables and columns. All the constraints are applied. So all the whatever the data I have it's been transformed is finally loaded into my warehouse. So in my database, I will have all the data stored in much more structured way. It's all in the forms of tables and the columns. Again, from the database perspective, that depends what kind of database the company is using. It could be Oracle, Teradata, Netezza. That depends upon the client to client, company to company. These three components are common in any of your data warehousing project you work. Finally, once my data has been residing in the warehouse, that you're going to come up with a BI reporting. When I say a BI reporting, it could be anything. It could be Cognos, Microsoft BI, or the MicroStrategy. So now we're going to discuss how MicroStrategy works. Whenever you perform any request from MicroStrategy, this is the one, right? If you run a report, if you run a dashboard, anything, any kind of an operation you request from MicroStrategy, it does not hit warehouse directly. Instead, whenever I perform any kind of a request, it will come first to a metadata. When I say a metadata, it's again a component of MicroStrategy. A metadata is a repository which stores all the definitions about the objects that you create in MicroStrategy. So if I'm creating a new report, if I'm creating an object called attribute, facts, metrics, these are all terminologies. Really don't worry about that. When we actually start working on MicroStrategy, these are all simple things, but these are just terminologies. I just want to make you familiarize. So whatever the objects you create, whatever the mappings you define, whatever the relationship you define within the MicroStrategy, all its definition, just remember, all its definition are stored in metadata. Okay, so when I say all it's been stored in the metadata, so first if I perform any kind of a request operation, it's going to come to the metadata, read all those object definition. Based on that, it's going to formulate the SQL query. That's a structure query language. It's a SQL query that would be generated in the metadata. And once my SQL has been generated, thereafter it will open a connection to the warehouse, fire that particular SQL, fetch the data, and then come back to MicroStrategy to display back the data in the required format. I will give you an example over here which will really help you to understand more. Let's say I'm trying to run a report, simple report, let's say region sales. Okay, I placed one object which will give me the region data. I have placed one more object which will give me the sales information. So just two objects, region and the sales, and I'm trying to run this report from MicroStrategy. Once I try to run it, first it will come to the metadata. Under the metadata, it will read all the object definition, which says that, okay, you are using an object which gives the region information. So how the region object has been created? It's pointing to which table and the column. In MicroStrategy, you would have created a region object which would be pointing to certain table and a column, right? So metadata is going to read that information. Okay, region as an object is pointing to this table and this column. Then it will go to the sales object. Okay, This is the aggregation. It's doing sum of some column pointing to this column pointing to this table. Once it reads all the definition, it's going to formulate the SQL. Just remember one thing, metadata is just going to store the object definition. It's not stores the actual data. It's just the object definition. So in this example, it's going to read the region definition. It's going to read the sales definition. And based on that, it's going to formulate the SQL. It's going to generate the SQL query, which will be ready to be hit in the warehouse. So once that SQL has been ready, once that SQL has been generated, thereafter a metadata, okay, thereafter from metadata, it's going to open a connection to the warehouse. Whatever the SQL has been generated, it's going to execute that SQL, fetch the required data from the warehouse, and finally it's going to come back to MicroStrategy to display the data as per the required format. This is how the MicroStrategy entire BI architecture works. Really don't worry, during the entire training when I said I'm going to show you the configuration part, we will see how to first configure the MicroStrategy server, how to configure the metadata, and how to connect this with the warehouse. We're going to see all this linking part in MicroStrategy, and that would be covered up under the MicroStrategy Intelligent Server Configuration and Administration. But this is just to give you an overview about the MicroStrategy BI architecture. I'm just going to take a pause over here. Any question with respect to the MicroStrategy BI architecture?
I have one question, sir.
Sure, please.
Like you said, the MicroStrategy is linked to the metadata, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, say for example, you have some changes going on in the data warehouse.
Okay.
Okay, so will the metadata get automatically updated? Say, for example, you've already done a report or something, and after doing the report, there have been some changes in the data warehouse. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Right.
what is there a linking between the data warehouse and the metadata which fetches to the MicroStrategy, or is it only with the MicroStrategy where you define a report and then it goes into the metadata and then to the data warehouse?
That's a good question. Let me tell you one thing. Metadata is something. Okay, let me just go back to the desktop. Okay, this is my MicroStrategy desktop. Okay, whenever you there is an initial, whatever the initial entry points you see over here, right? The training, servers, MicroStrategy analytics module, they are called as project source. Okay, a project source is a component in MicroStrategy which connects to your server, and or you can say which is connected to your metadata. Okay, within this particular project source, you can create multiple projects. Let me just open one sample. Let me just see if this I can show you or not. No, not this one. 1 second. Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so now let's say this is my project source, and if I try to log in into this project source, you will see multiple projects. A project source is connected to a metadata, so it is always going to be a one-to-one mapping with your metadata. A metadata, as I said, is going to store all the object definition. So whatever the projects I create, these are all projects. This particular circular icon, these are all projects. So whatever the projects I create, whatever the objects I create, all our definition are going to store in metadata. Individual projects, these are the one which are connected to your warehouse. I can have multiple projects created within the one metadata. One is pointing to my sales data, one is pointing to my HR data, one is just pointing to my customer related data, and so on. One is just pointing to my Oracle database, other is pointing to my Teradata database. So that depends what kind of warehouse you have. If in case, to come to your question, whenever you make any change in your warehouse, okay, either you're updating the table structure, you're adding some columns, you're renaming the some columns, you're going to come to that project, modify that object, or you're going to update the schema to make sure the changes are reflected. So when you make a change over here, my metadata would be updated automatically. So it's not a direct you go and update in the metadata. You are never going to update in a metadata at any point of time. You're going to make changes in your MicroStrategy project, because MicroStrategy project, if you look over here, I'm logging into the tutorial project. Okay, so this MicroStrategy project is something which is connected to your warehouse. So if in case there is change in the warehouse, I will come to MicroStrategy project, make the required changes, and my metadata would be updated automatically. Does that answer your query?
Yeah, it does. But how would we know about the changes? Are we going to get some, like, will we be informed about them, or is it like a
Yes.
process that, like a DBA, like you get you do the updations regularly with the
See,
report?
if in case there is any data change, you really do not have to modify anything. If my data is getting updated, if my new records are getting added, it will be automatically reflected in your MicroStrategy report. But if in case there is some like column addition, column deletion, column rename, in that case it's a process where you have to do the impact analysis. Okay, so if database guys, let's say, is renaming the table, of course there is an impact, right? Because I'm renaming the table. So the
Yeah.
DBA guys will come back to you and says, okay, I'm trying to rename this table. Do you see any impact in your MicroStrategy environment? I will say yes, it's an impact because I have a few objects which are created on top of it. So it says, okay, let's try to rename it, and you have to go and modify your objects. So that's a mutual discussion whether you have to proceed with that change or not. It's a discussion that's going to happen. But if there is only a kind of a data change, any updation of records, deletion, anything about the data change, you really do not have to do anything. It will fetch directly from the tables, so you are really not concerned if there is any kind of a data change. Only if there is any kind of a table structure change, in that case you have to discuss with the DBS, and you can act accordingly how to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so this is how the entire MicroStrategy, this is all about the MicroStrategy architecture. I do wanted to show you the developer that we have already discussed. So let's just do a quick recap. So whenever you log in into the desktop or a developer, the first thing that you're going to see is the project source. The one, this is called as project source, which is MicroStrategy Analytics module. How to configure the project source, how to get connected to the metadata, that we will definitely see in the training course. Within the project source, you can create multiple projects. So whatever you see over here, like customer analysis module, HR module, tutorial module, my first project, these are called as projects. Each projects are connected to your warehouse. So now let's say I want my certain set of user can access only HR information. So I will configure my MicroStrategy such that whenever the HR user tries to log in into the MicroStrategy, they can have access only this particular module, and they can run their report to get the required data. I have certain users who should have only access to Salesforce data. So I will create one more project which would be connected to the Salesforce warehouse, and they can fetch the required data. So how many projects to be created, that also depends upon your environment to environment, but MicroStrategy does offers it has a possibility to create a multiple projects. The best part over here is that the look and feel of any projects that you see is the same. So you really do not have to worry that is it something that if I do something in one project, it will be altogether different as compared to the another project. No, whatever the architect and development you do, it's going to be the same irrespective of any project you work. The approach is going to remain the same. Logic might differ. The report logics and the the other logic might differ, but if I show you from the look and feel perspective, look over here. If I go to the public objects, if I go to the schema objects, all the folder structures are same. Even if I log in into a different project and show you, you will see all the same folder structure. So it's a consistent that MicroStrategy is going to keep across all the projects, and that will really help you. Even if I work in one project or one of the MicroStrategy project, I can work on any project because my entire architect, how to do it, it's going to remain the same, and all this look and feel, all the folder structures are also same. So this is one of the tool component, that is MicroStrategy Desktop or a developer, and through which you're going to design everything, and based on that you're going to create your reporting environment. I wanted to show you one more thing. I'm just going to create a sample report. Okay, I have created few objects. I'm just going to create a sample report over here to show you something. Once you're done with your entire all the objects, let me just show you what kind of objects we have in MicroStrategy. Okay, these are the list of all the MicroStrategy objects. We have something called as schema objects. We also have something called as application or the public objects. Schema objects are something which whenever you start working on MicroStrategy, the schema objects are the first objects that you're gonna create. Schema objects are the objects which are directly mapped to your tables and the columns. So you have in your warehouse, you will have all the tables and the columns. So when you start working on MicroStrategy, the schema objects are something which are the initial objects that you have to create, like attributes, facts, hierarchies. Don't worry about all these objects. These are just from, I'm just giving you I'm making you familiar with all these objects. We are definitely going to see each and everything in detail. So the schema objects are something which are directly mapped to your tables and the columns. Once you're done with the schema objects are used to create your application or public objects. So whatever the application objects you see, like metrics, prompts, filters, consolidations, and so on. These application objects are created on using the schema objects. Application objects does not directly map to your tables and columns, but they are indirectly mapped using the schema objects. So whenever you start working on a project, you will first start creating schema objects, then you will create the application objects on top of schema objects, and when both of these objects are created, finally you're gonna create your reports, documents, and dashboards. Okay, so if I come back over here, I've already created all my, let's say, objects. I've created my schema objects, I've created my application objects. Thereafter it becomes very simple. You just have to drag and drop few objects. Let's say I'm just going to drag and drop certain objects over here. Let's say region and sales. Okay, and when I try to run this, okay, so I'm just adding the region region object and the revenue object, and when I try to run it, you can just imagine the flow. Okay, first it's going to come to the metadata, read the definition, formulate the SQL. I don't know why it's taking some time. Okay, once my SQL has been formulated, it's going to open a connection to the warehouse, fire that SQL, and fetch the required data. So if you look over here, the entire process has happened. It would have went to the metadata, read the object definition, formulate the SQL, and when the SQL has been generated, open a connection to the warehouse and get back the data. So if you look over here, at no point you're writing any SQL. A MicroStrategy is a very powerful tool. If I show you the SQL, this is what the SQL has been generated by MicroStrategy. If you look over here, the highlighted one. Okay, so this is the SQL which is generated by MicroStrategy. So you just need to know is how to create the required objects, and based on that, MicroStrategy is the one who's going to generate the SQL on your behalf. So it's just that you need to know our knowledge on about the MicroStrategy objects, know where you're going to write your SQL. MicroStrategy is a powerful tool where it's going to generate the SQL and fetch the required data. Okay, there's something also called, it's MicroStrategy is an it's like you don't see always the data at one level. So if you look over here, when I execute the report, as of now I'm seeing the data at the region and the revenue level. I see that for region, let's say for a Northeast, okay, I'm taking an example, and for the region Northeast, I see a revenue something around 8.5 million. Now I'm more interested within the region, what makes so much of revenue. So I'll just double click over here. As soon as I double click on the Northeast, it's going to run one more report which will show me a breakup via call center. It says that okay, for the Northeast there are two call centers like Boston and New York is the one which is generating your more revenue. So if in case I want to do some kind of a detailed analysis within the report, I can actually do the drilling feature, where I can drill down to a granular level, to a transaction level, to a bottom level, saying okay, where exactly, what is the cost, whether it's generating so much of revenue or it's not generating so much of revenue. So I understand for Northeast it was generating much more revenue. So which is the call center which is giving me more revenue? And if you look over here, it is the New York which is giving around more than 7 million of my revenue, and I can predict my business accordingly. I can act accordingly to make sure that I can generate more revenue out of it. And if there are some regions or if there are some call centers which are not performing that good, I can act accordingly to make sure even the business over there goes good. So this is just from the practical scenario. So I'm running a report at one level, but if in case I want to see for Northwest, it's around only 1.7 million. So I just wanted to know which are the call centers which are not performing so good. I just double clicked over here. This is the call center which is only giving me around $739,000. So this is how you can just keep on coming down to the report. So if I say, okay, who is the employee who's handling this call center? Okay, this is the employee, and the revenue generated is only 739. So I can drill down to the granularest level as much as possible to get me more detailed information, which will really help you to analyze the business. So it's a very powerful tool. No need to write the SQL. MicroStrategy generates it, and even I can drill from any level to any other level to do the more kind of analysis and make all the business decisions. So definitely we're going to see each and everything over here throughout the training, how to configure such kind of reports, how to create all such objects to make sure we get the correct required data. Okay, so I'll just come back to the training content that we were discussing. So definitely we're going to cover everything about how to create all these objects, all the schema objects that we saw in the presentation. From the developer perspective, we're going to create each and everything, like all the application objects, the manipulation methods, this style manipulations, the data manipulations, the required objects. We're also going to cover the advanced topics. There are like various advanced topics that we have, which are from the advanced filters, metrics, consolidation, custom groups. We are also going to consider the VLDB properties, which will be helpful to understand how to actually fine-tune your reports. If my reports are taking longer time for the execution, of course you have to tweak your report to make sure that it is the performance is much more optimized. Even that we're going to consider, that also we're going to cover up during our training. And finally we're going to see how to create all the dashboards and the visual insights in MicroStrategy. So as I've shown you, now let's go back to the dashboards. So if you look over here, we have just taken a one sample dashboard which gives me the top 10 world airports. So if you look over here, we have the data which has been listed over here is for the top 10 world airports, and it gives all the information, the name of the airports. I'm sorry again. Okay, so it gives me the name of the airports, the YTD volume, like that is the year till date passenger volume. So if I look over here, from February 2007 to March 2007, there is a huge spike in the number of passengers for Atlanta airport. So all gives me entire trend analysis. My data is not displayed only in the grid format, but it's a combination of a grid and a graph, which also gives me the trailing 12-month passenger count, percentage change year on year, percentage of international passengers versus the domestic passengers, and so on. So just one dashboard giving you so much of information, and that will be really helpful you to analyze the data. If you look over here, as soon as I click on any one of the airport, let's say London Heathrow, at the bottom section, if you look over here, my image got updated with the London Heathrow, some information about that particular airport, and this gives me the monthly breakdown. So even all the linkings have been done over here. So if you look over here, as soon as I keep on changing the airport, all the updated information is reflected in the bottom section of my dashboard. So you just not display the data, you also have it, you can make it more dynamic such that all the linkings have been enabled to understand much more data about it. I can even go to the historical trend, which shows me altogether different data. In my first tab, it was showing me the passenger volume trend. In the next tab, it's showing me the historical trend, where again I can just keep on selecting my airports for which I want to see my data, and accordingly it's going to show only for those airports which are selected. If in case I want to change my chart type, I will make it a bubble grid. And if you look over here, my grid, my graph type got changed based on the selection I have done. So the green, the bubble size indicates me the revenue data, whereas the color indicates my not the revenue data. Basically, it's a passenger count, and my color indicates me the percentage year-on-year growth. So if it's in towards the red, means my year-on-year growth is in negative. Where if it moves towards the green, of course, my year-on-year percentage growth is positive. So there are various types of graphs that you can actually set up in MicroStrategy, and you can create such beautiful dashboard. This is one dashboard where you have to make sure that you place every objects in a desired way to get the desired output in a systematic format. There is something also you can just create the dashboards on the fly. There are two ways that you can create a dashboard, where you create a report service document and dashboards where you just place all the reports, you place all the objects in specific way, enable the display as per your requirement. I can even create a beautiful dashboard within 2 minutes for my presentation. Okay, so I have I need to give a presentation to my executives, and I just want to create a dashboard. I'll just click on dashboard. I will select what is my source data. So I will select one report from which I want to fetch it, and we're going to see, we're just going to drag and drop this all objects, and you will see that a dashboard would be created within. This is just a sample dashboard, but let me just show you. We're just going to create a very simple dashboard, very effective, just within few seconds. So let's say I want to see the data in a grid format. So I'm just going to say grid. Along with the country, I want to see the data for region. So I'm just going to drag and drop over here. And I think that's it. So if you look over here, I'm displaying one grid section, which is showing me the data for country, region. If in case I want to add some kind of another data, I would say, okay, what kind of data I want to display? Let's say I want to display the data in a format of heat map. So I do not want to show the country. Instead, let's say I want to show for the subcategories. I'm going to remove the country from here. Along with the subcategory, I want to display for the category. Size is going to indicate my revenue. So I'm going to drag and drop my under size by as a revenue. And color, I want to display as a profit. So I'm going to drag and drop profit over here. Now if you look over here, just by dragging and dropping the few objects, I've created a beautiful chart over here. It's a heat map which is showing me the information about the categories and subcategories. The outer box is indicating the category, the inner boxes are indicating my subcategories. Block sizes indicate my revenue, so more the block size, more is the revenue, and color indicates my percentage of profit. More profit, green color, less profit, it's in red color. So if you look over here, just drag and drop, and this particular beautiful chart has been created. I can keep on adding my components in the dashboard, and my dashboard would be ready within few minutes. So let's just add few more things over here. Let's say this time I want to display the data in another format. I'm going to say yes. I do not want to display as like this. I want to display below the grid. So I'm just going to drag and drop over here, and if you look over here, now this is showing me the data based on the country and the year. So if you look over here, again, whatever the information that you want to see, this is showing me the cost information. If in case you want to see the, let's say, profit, I'm just going to drag and drop under the vertical axis, and now if you look over here, it's displaying me for the profit. I do not want to see for the country, but instead I want to see based on, let's say for the categories. Yeah, let's say I want to display it for the categories. So instead of country, I'm going to make it for the categories. I'm going to remove the country from here. Now if you look over here, it's displaying the data for all the categories. So just very beautiful chart. And if I'm just going to, if in case I want to present it, I'll go to the presentation view, and I can definitely showcase my dashboard to the, I can present my this particular dashboard to the user, to whatever the higher executives, and I can go through make them understand the data. Hardly took 3 minutes or 4 minutes to create such beautiful dashboard. There are a lot of things you can actually do it over here. This is just from the sample perspective that I have shown you. I just drag and drop few objects that did some formatting, and my dashboard is ready. And that's the reason why it says the MicroStrategy is such a powerful tool to get such kind of a data within a quick span of time. Okay, so this is all we have from the demo perspective, and we already saw what is the training content that we're going to really cover it up. So don't worry, we're going to cover up much more things. Whatever the contents we have, we're going to discuss much more in detail. But from the presentation perspective, this is something that I just wanted to show you. So this is all we have from the for the today's demo. Any questions so far?
Would you be able to provide any real-time data that we can, have a look at and then work on them, so we can get some experience before we start?
When you see a real-time data, which is that when you install the MicroStrategy, it comes with a sample data that we can definitely use it throughout your. You can definitely go through that. You can even, we're going to consider the same data for our training. So whenever if you can install the MicroStrategy, it comes up with the sample data. It comes up with the Microsoft Access database. So it has all predefined tables and the columns with the required data, and that we're going to use it for the for our training. But for the training, you really much about the data, because when you start with the training, we're going to consider each and everything. We're going to go through each and everything, and that will really help you. That will be very simple and easy to understand.
So is the tool going to be like a kind of package having all the stuff with the database and all those?
Yes, when you install the MicroStrategy, it will have everything. You will have the database, sample data, and we will use that to start it from the scratch and build all the objects.
So as I told you earlier, like a couple of my consultants, they are new to this technology. So what do you suggest? Like, meaning, is it okay for them to start right away with MicroStrategy, or do they need to know a little bit of the data warehousing and then start MicroStrategy?
From the MicroStrategy perspective, we are definitely going to cover concepts. So, but the only thing they need to know is what is SQL, how you can fire that SQL in the warehouse to get the data. So the simple topics here and there, that's good. But during our training, we're going to discuss about the logical modeling and the physical data modeling concepts, and that will really help them to start work on MicroStrategy. So I'm going to show you how to create the ODBC connection, how to connect with the database. This all would be covered up during our training.
Okay, and regarding the software, so do they install on our local machine?
Yeah, we will share. We will share the links and everything, and you can access that to install the software.
Okay.
All right.
So I have one question. Actually, we have been hearing a lot about big data and Hadoop and all that stuff, right? So how does MicroStrategy fit in that scenario? Like, do MicroStrategy have any connectors for Hadoop, or how does that work?
So when you say the connectors for the Hadoop, like what kind of connectors you're looking out for? Because MicroStrategy supports any kind of a database. Whatever the database you have, MicroStrategy can connect to it, and they can fetch the required data with all the versions.
Currently, we have HBase. We're working with HBase. So does MicroStrategy have HBase connectors inbuilt for it, or do we need to install some drivers, or how does it work?
Yeah, see, when I say the install the drivers, it's just for the ODBC connections. Okay, so once you have the required ODBC connection, MicroStrategy can connect to it.
Okay.
Okay, so whatever the database you are using.
Sorry, go ahead.
so whatever the database you are using, it just need a connection, that is the ODBC. So you define your driver or ODBC driver, and you just have to connect it with the MicroStrategy, and thereafter MicroStrategy can start pulling the data information from there.
Okay, so for the training, are we going to install a enterprise version or what
Enterprise
version of?
Enterprise version, where you can have all the server configuration done and everything. So we will share a link which has it's a evaluation version.
Okay.
So it's going to be entire enterprise version.
So it's gonna be only for 30 days or something, like whatever.
Yes. Yeah. And thereafter, okay, if in case you want to extend it, just uninstall and install it back.
Oh, okay. Do you have any idea how much MicroStrategy costs, like enterprise version?
Yes. Yes. Just give me a minute. Okay, I will share that information for you.
Sure.
Okay. So just I'm sharing it back again. So MicroStrategy depends. It's not only about the enterprise version. You purchase the based on the licenses. Okay. So if you're purchasing a MicroStrategy desktop, so that depends upon the user as well. So if you have certain things that you have to get in from the user per user, or you have to do it per CPU core basis. So if you look over here, if I want the licenses for the desktop, it costs around $600 per user. Okay, whoever accesses the MicroStrategy, so for based on that, if I have around like 400 user for which I want to make the desktop available, so I have to pay around like $600 per user. And if it is from the architect perspective, I need something around $5,000 per user. So you will generally find there are less number of architects as compared to the developers, because it's a highly cost involved over there. And if you ask me from the server, it's around like $1,200 per user, or it is around 600,000 per CPU core. So that depends what kind of
Wow.
it's a really costly tool. Trust me, it's really costly tool. So that depends what kind of components you want to purchase it for. That depends upon the license. So based on that, you will get a license key, and accordingly you can install all the components.
So can this be integrated into any of our web applications? Is it possible to integrate it, or is it like a separate service itself?
It could be integrated, but for that you require the SDK part, where you do all the configuration and you do all the coding just to integrate with your whatever from where you have to access it, the MicroStrategy. It could be integrated, but that requires the SDK coding.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so that's it for the demo. I will really thank you for joining in, and we will see. We can, we will see much more in detail during the entire training course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and bye bye.